Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. Joining me in the CNC is Lou.
Hello, everyone.
Karen.
Hello.
And I am Jesse Jackson. We are slowly, but with a lot of enthusiasm, getting toward the end of season 1. Today's discussion is the quality of mercy. Talia must enter the mind of a convicted murderer while Dr. Franklin goes down below to investigate a doctor who apparently is magically healing people. So, why don't we start with you, Karen? Quick thoughts about the episode.
I really enjoyed this episode. Not only were the main stories good and they fit together, which was awesome. You know, I love it when they do that. But we also got a really funny and cringy side story with a lot of innuendo. And I always think that's funny when there's like innuendo in a show like this, in a genre show. I don't know why, I just find it amusing and something that people don't usually think about when they think about genre shows. But Farscape had a lot of that. It had a few funny innuendo type episodes out of what's the one where they body switched? I can't remember, but they all body switched and they looked at each other's bodies and It was funny. So yeah, I just I kind of dug it. And also who hates anything with June Lockhart in it? I mean,
Yeah.
she was the best. So
Yes, I agree. How about you, Lou?
Yeah, I mean, June Lockhart, like the TV mom of my generation, along with Barbara Billingsley from Leave It to Beaver. So, I mean, just she's got those puppy dog eyes and she just conveys so much emotion. And Mark Ralston from Shawshank Redemption. Oh, geez, say that again. Shawshank Redemption, my favorite movie of all time, as Biggs. So I guess, instead of a hostile witness, I was a compromised witness because I just seeing those two on the screen. I know we talked about this off air, Jesse, but there was such a great opportunity for them to get Bill Mummy and her together. I would have made him one of the patients out of his makeup or something, just as a nice Easter egg for fans. I'm sorry they didn't do that. But yeah, I liked the overall episode. It was tight, it was cohesive, and it was a lot of good character stuff in here.
Yeah, I think this is one of the better standalone episodes. And I think it is because of the guest stars. Really, we've talked a little bit on the season that at times we felt like the guest star was not bringing as much to the table as the regulars. And so therefore it wasn't as strong. In this case, I think all the guest stars brought it. And I think back of, and I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, Jane Espenson, writer on almost anything you love, she's written. And her latest gig is Foundation. But she worked on Buffy, she worked on Angel, she just worked on a little bit of everything. And for a while, she had a blog where she gave advice to people wanting to get into the script writing, TV writing. And she talked about that, try to find two characters that don't interact together very often and write a script about that. And it will be one, unique, and two, it will be fun because they're not people that usually interact. So having Londo and Lanier act together had so much potential, and then they actually hit the potential, was fun. So, okay, let's start with, I think we have 3 really good storylines. So let's start with the murder. Talia, and we get the judge, and the judge has sentenced this guy who's a murderer that...
Jim Norton again.
Yeah.
Who we liked originally in the other episode. So seeing him back again was cool. Sorry for interrupting. But
No. I'm glad you did. And so you're like, okay, they have to sentence this, and they talk about the different ways they could take care of it. And they end up saying they have to do a mind wipe and then therefore a telepath has to do that. That's basically the death of a personality.
She does like a baseline.
Yeah.
So she figures out what his base personality is. And then after the mind wipe, she makes sure that none of that is remaining, which I thought was really interesting. An interesting look into how the psych horror legal, whatever they do for the legal system works. So again, sorry for interrupting.
No, please. So this is where we get the great Mark Rolston playing Carl Mueller. He has no remorse. He is happy. He talks about killing people adds to the choir. And so he wants the choir big enough so they can sing him to heaven. So the guy is really messed up. This is truly no remorse. Just, I go back to, as always, Bruce Springsteen, his song Nebraska, where they talk
Take
about
a drink, everyone.
There's just a meanness to this world. And we sure had some fun talking about his killing spree. So Karen, you were talking. Go ahead. Give us your thoughts on this storyline.
Yeah, he was amazing, Mark Rolston. I mean, he brings it no matter what. I really liked him in The Shawshank Redemption. He was in Aliens.
Yep.
And he was in quite a few Star Trek episodes. So just wherever he shows up, he really shows up. And you were talking about how sometimes they don't add, the guest stars don't add to the storyline. And I would argue that not only do they not add sometimes, but sometimes they taint it. And in this case, the episode was enhanced greatly by his performance and June Lockhart's performance, and even Kate McNeil, who played her daughter, who I don't know from anything. But anyway, watching him portray the serial killer was enthralling to me, because I feel like he really, really showed what kind of a twisted mind looks like on the inside, which it was really cool, just sinister. And like, you have to think about what is wrong in his brain to make him think that killing people is going to take him to heaven. And that part left me thinking about really disturbing things, but in a good way, I guess. But again, we had Jim Norton again, who I adore in this role. He is great. I loved seeing him back again. And his interactions with the cast and also with Mark Rolston as Carl, he's my definition of like a Judge Judy of the future. He's a hard ass. And I really appreciated that, and trying desperately to make sure that the rules are followed. He knows this guy should die. I mean, I think in his brain, he knows this guy should die, but he has to follow the rule of law, and the rule of law only gives him these options. And that was thought-provoking. In today's, again, we're comparing it to things that happen in the world today. And I would say that there are huge camps in the death penalty, non-death penalty camps, two sides of that issue. And seeing it here as well, I mean, you know how I read the Lurker's Guide after I watch the episode, and he mentions that there are several episodes that people interpret on both sides, that people said that this was pro-death penalty, and then there were people who said this was anti-death penalty, because they looked at it in different ways. And just an episode that makes you think that much about stuff when you're done watching it is aces in my book. And this story in particular, I mean, I have to admit that, the weirdness with Londo also was thought-provoking, but in a totally different way. But I appreciated and both of the main storylines were like that, because you think about healing people at the expense of other people, and then this whole death penalty, not death penalty, how to sentence someone. Just, I really appreciated that.
Karen pretty well covered everything, so I'm just going
sorry.
Oh, that's cool. It's good, because I'm totally in sync with what you're saying. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the guest stars in this episode and why the difference between certain guest stars and other ones, and obviously it has to do with experience and talent and so forth. But the big thing I notice with supporting actors or guest stars that come in is they always seem to be like at a Spinal Tap 11. So they're always like really up here, always like really strident one. And so they're very one note. Whereas like, as Karen said, like with Ralston, like there's just so much beneath the surface, and he's very Hannibal Lecter, like when you're expecting this big monster, but he's just like, very calm. But every once in a while, it's just like a curl of his lip or a tightening of the eyelid or something like that. It allows the audience to breathe in their own feelings and interpretations of what's going on. And he took what was a pretty minimal character in terms of, because we don't spend 2 hours with him getting to know the ins and outs of all of his psychoses and delusions and whatnot. But he conveyed enough that we thought that there was a lot more there than what was actually in the script. So that's what a good actor does. And same with June Lockhart, can just see it in her eyes. Like her eyes are so expressive. I don't know how she does it, but she was just so good. And I know that we had some negative feedback on our last couple of podcasts, and probably mostly due to my harping on certain points, but this episode shows the strengths of a standalone episode in terms of giving a satisfying story. And yeah, maybe things were wrapped up in a little bit of a neat bow at the end, but sometimes that's okay when the story's as good as it was. So I really appreciated all that. I am curious and Karen mentioned this as well, the implications of a mind wipe, which is in a way a death sentence. Because if the person is really is what's inside the body, it's rather than just the body. So it's like, what do you want to call it? The soul or whatever. So that there's interesting implications there. And I find it curious that they would use telepaths to do the baseline, but they didn't really explain how they wiped the mind. So I don't know if it's some sort of electroshock therapy, but you would think that they would actually use telepaths to wipe minds. So I don't know how that works. Maybe that's something that we'll find out later in the series. So that whole thing was interesting. And Talia going into his mind and finding out that he had not just committed one murder, but a lot of murders. And we're not even really sure how many, because the character Mueller refers to it as the choir. It really is a choir, because there's a lot of people in his head, or a lot of memories in his head. So I just like the dovetailing of this storyline with the June Lockhart storyline of her with a terminal disease, and taking something evil and using it to end up with something good, so that June Lockhart's character gets healed, and then she's able to go on with her. And I like the fact that she was carrying the guilt of that misdiagnosis of that one patient as well. So she's carrying the guilt of one mistake, and this other guy was guilt-free about all these other. So there's all these things that he had done. So there's this nice contrast between the two characters as well. So they're like two sides of a coin, right? So it was just a really elegantly done episode. And as you mentioned with Jane Espenson, and I guess we'll get into that storyline shortly, is the putting together of characters that aren't normally together is usually interesting, and something that fans are always happy to see, because they're saying, like, why don't these two people ever talk to each other, kind of thing. And this is not, I can't just put it on this episode, but it's still bothersome to me that we've lost Jakar, like in these last 4 or 5 episodes. And I don't know if he's in the final episode, but I just don't know if they don't have anything to do for him, or he's just not important in these storylines. And I hope he gets important in them later on, because I was complaining about the Minbari being put in the background, and now they've really jumped to the forefront. So, which is good. But that balance, and maybe that's what you're talking about, Jesse, where he finds a stride in the second season, where it's a better balancing act. And I'm hoping that's going to happen, because it's bothersome to me that you have this cast and large chunks of them are disappearing in storylines.
Yeah, I think, as always, there is the problem of how do you find room for everyone?
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this before. Sometimes, like the original Game of Thrones, right? They would, we haven't got this person apart, so we'll give them a little 5-minute scene that really, where it would be better served if we'd spent more time on the quote unquote main storyline. I don't think it's spoilers to say they get better at that.
Mm-hmm.
I think with that big of a cast, you're always going to have times where you don't have everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it would be interesting to know, is that partly financial? Because like when you do a contract, maybe you're guaranteed, 18 episodes versus 22 episodes, or how much you're going to spend screen time.
Mhm.
But I think that's a fair concern. And yes, they get better at it as the series continues.
Yeah. It's just that, like, I can understand juggling a cast, but it's when you don't juggle them for, like, they're disappearing for 4 or 5 episodes. Like if they are gone for one episode and they show up again in the next one, like alternate episodes or something, that works better. So I'm hoping at least that they get to that point.
Well, and like we didn't see Talia forever, and now then she's been in, as the order we're watching this, 2 or 3 in a row, and actually pretty significant roles.
Yeah.
I am fascinated as well by the idea that this death of personality, I'm going to, and it feels a little bit like you are splitting hairs. Well, we don't believe in the death penalty, so instead we're going to keep your body alive, but we're going to destroy your mind. And as you go back to the soul, right? Like, is this person, what is the right thing? And I love your point, Karen, that JMS talking about, some people read this in favor of capital punishment. Other people, it's a very strong against capital punishment, which tells you it's a good story.
Yeah.
Because if both people can see this and go, oh, wait, because the mirror is reflecting their own thoughts. Totally agree with everything you both said about the strength of this. This guy he's not a charming killer. Like sometimes you'll see like, oh, you can understand. He's almost like a cobra or something you're staring at it because you're intrigued. This guy is just a bad guy. A bad guy in every way possible. He has no remorse. If he had the chance, he'd kill again. And the idea that they're all concerned, and they all, like you said, the judge is like, man, if I had my way, I'd be right there with Garibaldi. Let's space this guy. By the way, Garibaldi, his typical overly exuberant, hey, this guy killed a couple of people plus my guy.
Right.
I'll space him myself.
Which I had to agree with him at that point.
Yeah.
I'd be on his side 100%.
Yeah.
And that might tell you where my opinion lies on the death penalty or non-death penalty. Yeah. But, this guy was worthless.
Yeah.
And there was no doubt he was worthless. Yeah. So
he's passed now, but there was Andrew Greeley was a Catholic priest that wrote tons of novels. Just tons of novels. And I used to love reading Andrew Greeley's novels. But there was a line once where he said, someone was often in error, never in doubt. And I don't know if Garibaldi is often in error, but there is never a doubt in his mind. He is confident about his feelings and his beliefs, and he's going to stick through. So we lead to, and as Karen said, our A and B storylines end up climbing together. Our doctor is sitting there. He's realized that Dr. Franklin, Stephen, is, hey, we start out with, he has an unauthorized clinic down below. And that's a great scene where Susan finds him and he says, okay, take off your cloak. She says, not without dinner. And I thought that was a great scene between them when she says, look, I break the rules sometimes too. I want to be involved in the fun. And so he says, okay, get dressed, wash your hands, and we can put you to help. So
grub in.
Yeah, grub in. So he has an unauthorized clinic and then this is where you get a little confused about, well, so MedLab is free it's like a military base, maybe. Like if you go to a hospital and to a military base, there's no charges. But if a civilian goes to, I guess they would charge. So it's a little murky on that. But he's got this clinic he's helping, and he notices that there are less patients. And we find out that there is June Lockhart, Dr. Lauren Rosen, has opened up a clinic where she is healing people. And his first thoughts are, she's cheating people. She's a faith healer. She is selling snake oil. And it turns out, no, there is this alien machine that takes a little bit of your life energy and gives it to you to heal. So, Lou, I know you love June Lockhart. You've already shared that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I do want to give a little love to Kate McNeil, who plays June Lockhart's daughter. I kept staring at her going, I know her, I know her.
Yeah.
I went to her IMDb page, and there is not one role.
Agreed.
But she has been in dozens of shows, everything from she was in the Waltons in the 90s, a TV show's Bodies of Evidence, which I did not recognize, WIOU, which I don't remember. But she was in North and South Book 2. So she has been in a lot of TV shows, including one of my early Cain and Abel, the miniseries, based on the Jeffrey Archer books I love. So anyway, really good, both mother and daughter, both good actresses, good stories. Lou, talk to us about that storyline.
Yeah, she was that whole thing. Like you said, it was a little confusing with the doctor running that undercover facility or clinic for people. Like, I didn't really understand the restrictions about what, and I assume it has to do with budget or something, or maybe maybe they don't have health insurance there, like like you guys don't have in the States. But so maybe that's what it's based on. So, because as for me, Canada, our healthcare is pretty well provided for. Except for
rub it in.
Except for unnecessary treatments, like if you want to get liposuction or something like that. But if you need surgery or something like that, or whatever, or treatments, you're going to get it, and a lot of it's mostly subsidized. So I didn't really understand that. So I'm basing that on your healthcare systems as to why he would do something like that, because these people, I assume, couldn't afford to pay for it, or they didn't have the coverage from their employer. So that was interesting, and it's one of those things that, depending on what country you're in, you probably would just say, okay, that makes total sense to me. But I was kind of going like, what the hell is he doing? Like, I thought he was doing something illegal at first. And I thought, okay. So that was interesting. And then his initial reaction to June Lockhart, and the show, the way the scenes are staged, and that you're on his side, that something's fishy going on. I'm going, wow, this is really a bold role for June Lockhart to playing like a con artist. I actually, in a way, would have kind of liked to have seen that, but that would have been cool. So it was a good setup. And then the daughter acts as a buffer, and fortunately for the doctor, what's his name? Jeez, Franklin.
I can't do
Franklin.
Dr. Franklin.
He is honorable enough to at least have those patients charted or followed, so he can determine whether or not that's June Lockhart is a quack or not. And eventually he finds out that she's legit. But the thing is, we've learned through the daughter that Dr. Rosen is really driven by guilt as to one of the reasons why she's doing this, because she misdiagnosed that one patient. But what her daughter doesn't know is that machine is draining life energy from the doctor. So there's all these little nice reveals and subtleties that widen the emotional context of what's going on here. So something that could be pretty straightforward actually has a fair bit of depth to it. So I really appreciated all that interplay, and the fact that Franklin would not tell the daughter what was going on with the mother. Again, like that doctor-patient's confidentiality. Plus, he's got the moral code to honor her wishes as well. So I just thought there was a lot of texture to that whole storyline that I was really impressed with.
Karen?
Yeah, same stuff as what Lou was saying. And I'll expand a little bit, and Jesse can expand more. But yes, that happens here in the United States. We have underground clinics for people who can't afford care. Some of them are legal, some of them are illegal. And that is, on the face of it, because we want to make sure that our clinicians are operating within the law, they're licensed, all that kind of thing. Underneath all that, it's a monetary issue. The hospital system wants their money. The drug system wants their money. The supply system wants their money. And when people aren't being charged for it, they don't get their money. So, and that's the insidiousness of our healthcare system, that it is largely based upon the people who are rich trying to get richer. And I mean, that's a lot of our systems here in the United States. We're greedy. I do not put myself in that category because I'm very poor. But the healthcare system is terrible here. And people are fighting very hard for universal healthcare. I don't think it will ever happen, at least not in my lifetime, because it's based on money. So, and as long as we base it on money, that's what it's going to be in the United States. So,
yeah. And I read something very interesting years ago that most of our founding fathers were lawyers. And so therefore, in the Constitution, they built that you would have the right to an attorney, even if you can't afford one, as you hear in a million cop shows. They said if our founding fathers had been doctors, they probably would have had you have the right to a doctor, whether you could afford it or not.
Yep.
That it just was that little thing. And we're going to get off politics in a minute. You guys jump ahead a couple of minutes if you don't want to hear this. But there is, I can remember as long as I have conscious, the idea was you don't want private, you want private healthcare, because if you have universal healthcare, you can't choose a doctor. They don't have to worry about keeping you safe. They don't have to clean the exam room because you're stuck with nowhere else. And it's just so much better having our care.
Which is bullcrap.
Exactly. And now now you see more and more people saying, no, I have the right to choose what doctor I want. And I don't have to wait 9 months to get an appointment. I don't have that at all. So it is a totally different mindset. And so, Lou, it is exactly right. There are people that would not have health insurance, or they would end up having to go to the quote unquote charity hospital or a free clinic to get what you would call just basic health care. So Dr. Franklin wants to help this. And then because of this system, he is worried that this doctor is cheating people,
right,
selling them false hope. And we've established that Stephen Franklin has a little bit of a God complex. Like he chose to fix that young man's life, even though it was against his parents' wishes, it was against his wishes. And they ended up killing him because they thought his body was alive and his soul had already been dead, which an often thing with this, our killer, right? The different things. So yeah, I love that. It turns out, and I agree with you, Lou, it would have been interesting if she had been shady.
Well, she technically is shady. Technically. Yeah. But she is actually providing the service that she...
Yes, she is doing.
That's one of the other things about America, is that there are so many gullible people that buy into like snake oil salesmen.
Yeah. Well, when you're desperate, that's understandable. I just want to make the point again that it's interesting because I'm not in the States, from an outsider's perspective, and if there was a Canadian show and you'd watch it, you'd probably say, well, that's kind of weird. Why are they doing that? But it's just inherent in the DNA of shows that certain things are just automatically carried into a show that I don't even think maybe Straczynski even thought about when he wrote this episode, that this is just particular to our country, and other countries wouldn't understand this or would have to do a little bit of a double take on it. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, but this show is in the future. Is this situation with healthcare still going to be the same in the future? Or maybe it will. Maybe it'll be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of hope that it'll change.
Maybe only people that are really, really rich can afford healthcare, and everybody else is. But then on the other hand, with technology, maybe people can just take like a gene pill or something to correct the issues. Like, who knows? So I understand why they did it, but if you're projecting technology in the future, like healthcare, like a lot of this stuff would be automated too, right? So like how often would people really have to go to the doctor for? Again,
we hope so, but who knows?
Yeah, but then there'll be other diseases that we don't know of now that exist in the future. So it balances out, but it is an interesting cultural aspect of the show. That's something that's just inherently in the DNA of one country is not in another. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and we get two of those in this same episode. We get the death penalty issue, which probably is not a big deal in other countries. That They either have a strict death penalty that no one argues with, or they don't.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't even know if Canada has a death penalty. I'll have to Google that while we're talking.
I don't know either, to be honest.
I don't think we do.
And it is different no matter, I mean, if you cross a state line, it's different here in the United States. They can make their own rules. So like Georgia does not have a death penalty, which is where I live now. And at least as far as I know, I've only lived here a few years, and they do have a death penalty in Texas where Jesse is.
And for a while there was a lot of discussion about the state of Texas was killing people at a higher rate than any other state. And a lot of my fellow citizens would have been,
right. Right.
So,
it's, again, we're getting into some stuff, but it's disproportionately people of color, and it's all sorts of stuff mixed up in it.
Yeah.
So we had that issue, and then we had the right to health care in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, Canada hasn't had a death penalty since 1963. And the only thing that we have still on the books is under the National Defense Act for traitor. But that hasn't been carried out since 1945. And actually, they eliminated the death penalty for those offenses on September 1st, 1999. So, we don't have the death penalty in Canada anymore. So.
Yeah, treason is an automatic death penalty no matter where you live in America. And you know what? There's some people that I would be okay with that happening to.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, let's go back to the episode. I hate that we derailed it, but some people really enjoy that we do this. So,
Yeah. So, going back to Franklin finds out that she's not cheating. And first off, I think there's a lot to be discussed about how smart is it to really take this alien device that you don't really know how it works. But hey, I figured out a little bit how to do this. I do love the whole Chekhov's gun thing of she says, I think it was originally used as a form of corporal punishment, that someone who would die, someone who had committed murder, someone who did a heinous crime, they would have them give their life to someone else. Franklin does talk about that there's now synthetic blood in the future, so no one has to donate blood anymore. And so we have this discussion that, and then it later comes through, not by force. He ends up, our criminal breaks off, he goes, he finds it, he is shot, he ends up threatening to kill June Lockhart and her daughter, and he's being healed, and he continues to say, oh, I'm going to do this. And then the doctor switches the button and basically sucks all his life force from him to give to her. But it also sounds like she was taking her illness and sending it to him because, she talked about all that. So, Luz, any thoughts about this?
Yeah, it's poetic justice.
Right.
Is the best way to put it. It's the only scenario where Dr. Rosen would actively take someone's life is protecting her daughter and her daughter's life. So that was nicely set up unlike the Superman neck snap and Man of Steel, which was just horribly set up. This is a good setup for making somebody kill somebody. So I quite liked it from that perspective. And sometimes the good people come out on top. It doesn't happen very often, but it did this time.
Yeah, good. Karen?
Yeah, it's self-defense, obviously. I think this in a lot of cases on TV, in real life, whatever. When someone is under threat like this, being held hostage or getting broken into and robbed and all that, the guy is going to kill him anyway.
Yes.
He would have killed them 100% after he got healed. He has no compunction about that.
Well, to give him credit, he needed a soprano for his choir.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Sorry, could not resist a very morbid joke.
No, that's all right. I get it. I think that's funny. So what she had to do is what she did. She had to save their lives.
Yeah.
And at that point, not only was it her life and her daughter's life, it was also Dr. Franklin's life at that point. And doing it in front of him, I think, was vindication for her, saying, well, now I have someone else who sees it's self-defense.
Right.
I'll be backed up, and I have to do this.
And I think in her mind, even if she was later convicted or something, she didn't care.
She still would have done it. Right.
She would have done this because she's like, I'm going to protect my daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think so too. I think she really didn't think about it that much. I just think she knows that's what's going to happen. And on a personal note, and I'm going to derail this any chance I get, apparently, today.
That's okay.
I have MS, as Lou and Jesse know.
Yes.
And this disease that she had, Lake's disease, I looked it up on the wiki and all that. It's not a real disease, but it pulls from a lot of other things. And the symptoms are very much like MS. One of the offshoots of MS is called, oh, now I can't think of it. It causes your optic nerve to be attacked.
Okay.
And this is optic neuritis. Thank you, brain. It is actually what I had that got me the diagnosis of MS. If you have optic neuritis, it's like 99.9% of the time you have MS, because it's like one of the side effects. And that's what causes a lot of people to. And one of the symptoms of Lake's disease is blurry vision. It also causes joint pain, arthritis, which again is one of the things that happens with MS. It causes pain to your endocrine system, I guess, from an inference. And that's not really an MS thing, but man, you can have a lot of pain with MS and a lot of the offshoot symptoms. And if there was a way for me to transfer this to someone like this guy, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And not just me, but anyone with MS. It's insidious.
Yes.
Autoimmune diseases are terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, honestly, I wanted to stand up and go, hooray, when she was cured, because that's something that's personal to me. And it gives me hope almost that things like this could be cured. I know there are lots of things being investigated that help regenerate nerves. And that's essentially what I am partially blind in my right eye from this, because once your optic nerve is damaged, there's a certain point it goes past and it can never be fixed. It can never regenerate. There's no cure for it. And so seeing her with an incurable disease where she only has a couple of years to live, it got me in the feels.
Yes.
So her storyline was not only a great storyline in general, but it also resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I would try anything if I could help regenerate some of my vision, if I could get rid of some of my pain. So this machine being untested and everything, but they know it can take away pain, I'd be right there with her. So her storyline was great. I love that the doctor runs into the daughter before he goes to the quarters and starts talking shit about her behind her back to the daughter. And the daughter's like, whoa, yeah, go ahead, find her.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. And that he and Janice might have a little thing. That's cool. So there were lots of things about the storyline that I really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. I think one of my favorite storylines so far in a series was this June Lockhart storyline.
Yeah. I wonder how much, when she saw the script, if she asked for her to do what she did. I mean, because she's got an image and that she's never killed anybody before that I can think of. I wonder how much they really had to tailor that storyline to make her feel comfortable with that final scene. Maybe she didn't have any, maybe it was already set up like that. And she thought it was great, or maybe they had to tinker with it a little bit to make sure that the Mueller character was as despicable as possible, so that she had little to no qualms about playing that scene out. But I guess we'll have no way of ever knowing that. But I'm curious of how that played out when they pitched that episode to her. Yeah.
Although the fact that it's in defense of her daughter, I think probably helped a lot.
Yeah.
And the fact that she didn't have a valid medical license at that point, I think that's a bad thing in terms of like if it were in real life. But in the case of this, where she doesn't have that impediment to quote unquote do no harm, it might have also been like a loophole to say, well, it's okay because he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they did an amazing job this episode making 2 guest stars very nuanced.
Yeah.
With limited screen time. So yeah, my hat's off to, if it was Jane Espenson, then yeah, she did a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. She wasn't involved with this. I was saying her advice.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
No. This was written by JMS. And in fact, he talks about Lurker's Guide. He had had the flu and actually doesn't remember writing about it. So he's just like this, but he ended up being very happy with it. All right. So Lassie's mom is healthy now. She gets to go to, to the
she
Jupiter
wasn't in
2.
the well.
Yes. She was. She gets to Jupiter 2 and all's good. So let's go to the dessert. Londo is chastised by someone from Centauri Prime. According to this, it's a senator that, hey, you need to build alliances. You need to get connections. And what turns out to be a very fortunate, after they hang up, he points to his stomach and says, do this. The same way a stereotypical construction guy would have grabbed his crotch and said, oh, here. So he runs into Lanier and they visit. And I don't know anything about you. I spent all my life in a monastery. I came here. That's my life.
Done and done. Yeah.
Yeah. And Londo, of course, always says, oh, to my great, I'm so busy, but I will take you under my wing. And they have adventures. They take Lanier to their version of a gentleman's club, a strip club. Lanier's eyes become big as saucers. He says, we'll make do with his chip, because of course Londo's not going to spend his own money. They find out Lanier is really good at probability. They play cards. We determine that poker, yes.
They pronounce it wrong, which I love because he doesn't want to tell him what it's really called.
Yeah, and we find out that Londo cheats, which is not surprising, but how he cheats is a little bit different. And I don't know if we've seen that too often on television. And we end up getting the only scene with the commander, which is a pretty funny scene. I will give you an explanation as soon as the room stops spinning. We're in a space station. It's always spinning. You can see my problem. So
yeah, that was classic.
Karen, start with you. Your thoughts on this wonderful, at least from my perspective, C plot that just was for fun.
Yes, I agree. It was cute, wonderful, funny, gross. I mean, there were so many things about it that I have to give a thumbs up to. And the gross part, I give a thumbs up to as well. I thought it was really funny. And it took me watching it twice to get that he was going, bite this, and he was touching his stomach. And then later on, the things were coming out of his stomach. And then he explains how they work. Yeah, you guys, I'm making gestures, so you won't see that, but that's why Lou is laughing. Yeah, again, the Lurker's Guide makes me laugh. He says, someone asks, what are they called? And he says, testiculares. Testicularities, which is hilarious. The males have 6 and the females have slots in their back. Gross. And then it says, what kind of birth control did the Centauri use? And the answer is conversation. I almost died laughing when I read that.
How well does that work?
And also, JMS talked about that the prop people had so much fun going back to him and going, well, do we show veins? Do we not? And he's like, oh, come on, you're having way too much fun with this.
Yeah, although
yes.
I would have as well. I mean,
tab A into slot A.
Ugh.
Tab A, tab B into slot B. Yeah.
Gross.
Yes.
Yeah, and someone asked, well, does that mean they have multiple births? Well, why would it mean they have multiple births? I mean, it's just, anyway, I don't want to get into biology.
Yes. So an elephant can use his trunk, their trunk, to grab things.
Right.
The Centauri can use their
appendage.
Yes. Their Johnson.
One of their appendages.
Yes.
Yeah, they're one of its Johnsons. Yes. It has Pete Johnson, Dave Johnson. Anyway, yeah, funny for sure.
Meet the Johnsons.
I think part of his ultimate motivation was getting a free ride at the. I'm not going to say that. I was going to say the tea club.
Yeah.
But at the strip club.
Yes.
And you guys, you have no idea how dirty my mind is, honestly. And I'm not talking about Lou and Jesse. They do.
Yes.
But our listeners do not. I swear a lot. And I was just going to say something.
They do now.
Yeah, I was just going to say something really vulgar. But anyway, I think part of his motivation is this guy is gullible enough to pay for everything. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to get his card. I'm going to pay for my drinks. And he has to drink water because he doesn't drink. So his would have been free.
Which I thought was funny because he's like, at first, Londo's like, oh, no, there's no alcohol.
Right.
He's like, okay, because when we drink alcohol, we become rage.
Homicidal. Right. Oh, and then he's like,
only water for him.
Right.
Give yourself a good tip. He is very generous.
Right. It's so funny. And that's already been established that he will walk away from a bar if someone is sitting with him in order to get the other person to pay. You know, it's just, I like that flavor that they add to his character. And now we're learning more about him than we want to learn.
Yeah.
And I also enjoyed Bill Mummy's performance again of Lanier. Mm-hmm. I laughed out loud when he said 11D because that's like a funny word to me, 11D. Yeah. I don't know why, but it just is. And that whole, I'm just sorry, that whole storyline was amazing for a C storyline, in my opinion, like 10 times better than the motorcycle storyline with Lanier. And that, again, I liked seeing him interact with someone that he doesn't normally interact with. And the fact that they put him with someone who could be no further away from his personality.
Yeah.
It was great.
And the idea, right? Like, and then I discovered that there's one word that's in every dialect, but it doesn't mean the same thing.
Right.
And Londo is
it means like, potato, it means linen, it means and Londo is just
like, oh, kill me.
He says kill me.
Yes.
Which made me laugh because I have said that myself.
Yes.
But yeah, kill me to the waitress.
Yes.
So
and it's
funny.
Obviously, I love that he's a regular there because the waitress knows him.
Mm-hmm.
He knows the waitress.
He knows the woman dancing as well.
Yeah. So it is just so much fun. Lou, any thoughts?
Yeah, that call was weird to me because if anybody's got connections on this Babylon 5, it's Londo. He knows everybody already. So I think what he meant was to get more cozier with powerful people, and Lanier is not.
Well, you notice he asked about Delenn. You know, he says, when is Delenn coming back? And then he gets this sort of, maybe I can use this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, maybe I can use him to get to her. But we already know that they seem to have a relationship because in the last episode, they were pretty chummy, right? So, yeah, so I understand it's just a device to get him to go with Lanier, which was fine. But it was just, it was kind of a weird setup. But anyhow, so their interactions were funny. The whole thing about the Minbari not being able to drink alcohol was an interesting thing. And I don't know if that'll have something down the road. It would be interesting to see a Minbari actually drink some alcohol. So that will be interesting if that ever happens. And like Lanier comes off like a Kung Fu Shaolin priest because he's been in this monastery all his life. But yet when they get into this bar and there's a fight, the guy's got all these Kung Fu moves. I'm going, like, this is like, where's David Carradine? Like, who needs David Carradine, right? So that was interesting too. And I got echoes of that whole scene in the nightclub in the Dark Star. Reminded me of like the Trouble with Trouble's bar fight sequence. So that was a much better staged thing. I was kind of, when that happened, I thought, okay, now we're going to see something like that, but that didn't quite play out that way. But it was fun. And like Karen's covered the whole tentacle thing, but at first I didn't clue into like whose tentacle is that? And then when you realize whose it is, but why would the card stick to it? Like how's he doing that?
And I think we have our answer.
Is it because it's moist, or does it have a sucker on the end of it? Like, you don't know, right? So, and then when you realize what it is, it's like, oh, and then people are touching these cards. It's like, I don't really know what GMS was trying to accomplish with that. It's beyond a sight gag, but it was like, it's pretty icky. I don't really, I don't know. It just doesn't really sit well in my brain pan. I don't know how to say.
Yeah, it's cringy.
It's like, it is cringy.
Yeah. So I don't understand. Like, does he talk about why he did that scene?
Well, he does say he had the flu while writing it.
Yeah, he did say he had the flu.
This is true.
So I think partly was in the middle of this flu, delirious, like, oh, it'd be funny. Let's show that, Londo cheats at cars using his male appendage. Oh, that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe he was on NyQuil or something.
Yeah.
Because, getting drunk always puts stuff like this in your head.
Yeah, it was. It was. And I will tell you, it's not that there has been multiple storylines you guys have discussed that come back in future episodes. Some for important reasons, some for not important reasons. But I will tell you that they did not follow up with the doctor and the daughter's chemistry. She is not seen again, which I think is kind of a shame. Yeah, because I thought she was a really neat actress and they had some fun chemistry. So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and the bullwhip sound effect.
Yes.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
Is it cold in here? No, I find the temperature very moderate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was, they set
they set the ice
on top of it. Yeah.
And you would think that would have been immediately he would have pulled back because it would have hurt him. But
well,
that should be sensitive
for him.
And we get the reveal, right, where he shows the goddess with all these 6 tentacles. And like, oh, you think this was just a theory? And so we now know that.
And we'll never look at that statue again the same way.
The Centauris are gifted. So
I guess.
Yes. Any final thoughts?
Yeah.
I do have to say I enjoyed, and I have no idea whether this comes into play again, but the fact that Talia was on the Mars colony as well, there's a little drop in about that. And I am hoping that there are quite a few things in this episode that get dropped further on. Please don't tell me, but there are a lot of just little things even in this episode that intrigue me. So I hope some of them come to fruition in the future.
Okay.
One of the things that I've struggled with is the scale of the station, and the last couple of episodes have really driven home that there's very different layers to this station, and that the fact that we have these underground situations with these, like the Dark Star nightclub and these free clinics or off the book clinics and that. So these last couple episodes have really helped cement that for me. And instead of thinking of it as it's a much more heterogeneous society than when I first started watching it at the beginning of the season. So I've appreciated it from these last couple of episodes from that aspect as well.
Yeah, they do a good job of this is big and there's a lot going on. So good. Very nice. All right.
Yeah. Ratings.
Karen?
I think I'm going to give this one 9. I don't want to go with the obvious appendages, but what else can I pick?
It's just there.
9 appendages, right? You can't ignore it.
No, you can't. Lou?
I'm fluctuating between the 8.5 and 9. I'll go with a 9. Veritable parade of internal organs.
Very nice. Well, I agree with you guys. This was a really well done one and done. And because I know what's coming on, there are a couple things that they've set the thing that we will later come back to. So I'm going to give it 9 out of 10 alluring strip teases. So yeah.
There you go.
All right, Karen, do we have any feedback?
I don't know. Do we?
We are good.
Did you send me some?
But I can look it up really quick.
Pull back the curtain.
How about Lou? Do you know? How about anything from anything that we need to cover from our YouTube channel?
Well, I'm looking at the feedback for part 1 of Voice in the Wilderness, and the Elaine of Shalott, I hope I said that right, Elaine. She complimented me, which I'm going to take in stride because somebody else cuts me up, but later on. But anyhow, she says that I'm right on with the going to the sea being a Lord of the Ring reference. It isn't actually death. It is finding a way from the world where they can serve a purpose as they live out their final years. And then Skyfire 2020 says the third in command is a Major Atumbe who was mentioned once in the episode Eyes. So I'm not quite sure what that's referencing. I don't remember that particular scene or sequence anyhow, but it must have been somebody on the Hyperion, I guess. And Mike said we could have watched it as one episode. I agree, but this is the way that it worked out.
Yeah.
Marteki's back again. He says we get a showcase for how differently Babylon 5 approaches its world building compared to other shows. Other shows were often very overt and telling the audience about the quirks of the world and their technology, giving reasons for everything happening on screen. Done well, that approach leaves very few open questions and potential plot holes, but we also see that it often leads to a lot of technobabble and many contradictions on a larger scale in between episodes. And I think that's a very fair point. I just, again, would point out it's a difficult balancing act that every show faces. And from my perspective, I think that they've gone a little too far in not explaining things enough, but that's a stylistic choice. So you either get used to it or it's just going to be a continuing source of irritation. Chris M. and people are just, I knew this was going to happen. They're all responding to my comments about this Epsilon 3 planet not being explored a little more thoroughly. So that's fine. Miss MSLRHD, Missile Herd, felt that's had a lot to do with the Matrix. So that's an observation that we made. So that was fair. And let me see. And then we have quadruple exclamation point, quadruple question mark, says he got lost with our discussion on the first 3 minutes. That's unfortunate. And I think that's something that we're all prone to, that if we watch something and we don't agree with it, we'll switch it off. But I would have hoped, and maybe that you'll come back and you're bored on another day and listen to another episode. And I hope this wasn't the first episode, because I think if this comment to me smacks of the fact that this was the first episode that they listened to, because if you've listened to the other ones, I think we've been pretty balanced in our coverage of each episode. So it's unfortunate that you felt that way. And I'm hoping that if you were, for whatever reason, come back again, will give us a second shot, because I do believe that we do try to be balanced. And out of the three of us, there's no doubt you'll end up realizing that I tend to be the most stubborn or rigid or critical. And that's just the balancing act that the three of us play out. Jesse's in my mind, sometimes the overly optimistic one. Karen's in the middle, and I'm at the other end of the spectrum, but I think it makes for a good balance.
I do too. Yeah. So I probably did not send this to you, Karen, so I will read it. Nathan.
Oh, I love Nathan. Hi, Nathan.
For the Quality of Mercy. Hi, guys. This time I won't ramble as much as usual because I don't care for this episode. Felt like a usual afterthought with 2 self-contained stories, one dramatic and one that not that serious. I never thought that the nature of Londo's appendage was anything special, maybe because I'm not from American culture or because I was a child when watching the series. So to this day, the reaction most newbies have and the jokes around the situation are strange to me. If anything, I'm wincing in solidarity when the cold pitcher is placed on Londo's tentacle.
And that's something I definitely can't relate to.
Yes.
But
romance, yes. Romancing of Dr. Rosen's daughter seems out of place, so as much of this episode tried to make Franklin sympathetic. His womanizing didn't endear him to me. It's just undoctorish with regards me. I did not find I have not seen Franklin as a womanizer. There was a little connection there. I thought he felt a little thing, and so he asked her to dinner.
And she's not as patient.
Yeah.
I mean, if she was as patient, I could see that being an issue, but
Yeah.
But isn't everybody on Babylon 5 potentially a patient?
Well, potentially, yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
So who would he ever be able to date then?
Exactly. Yeah.
He would probably, now he hasn't treated her yet, but we do know that
he would assign her to another
right.
doctor.
We do know that there are other doctors there. So
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's interesting that email, again, cultural differences, that she was taken back by something that everybody else is responding to. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that was it. You're very nice. Okay. Any final thoughts before we do our blatant plugs?
Nothing from Holly this week, huh?
No, did not see. Let me
hi, Holly.
check that.
Hi, Holly.
Hey, Holly.
A podcast without Holly. Wow.
Right.
Yeah, I do not see Holly. Nope, I do not see Holly. No, she did avoid
the Holly streak. The Holly streak is broken.
No.
It's like
no.
Oh, I need to do today's Wordle.
Yes, I do not see. Nope, do not see. She sends Babylon Squared, so she may thought we were going to do Babylon Squared first. Yes,
got it.
Yes,
so it's our fault, Holly.
It is. Sorry. Yeah, I failed at Wordle once this week, and I'm very upset about it. Speaking of Wordle, did you? It might have been the same one.
Probably. I think it was 2 days
ago.
It
was I think so. It was a really obscure word, a dumb word. So anyway.
And by the way, we just got a few hours ago, Alexander B. sent in Voice of the Wilderness. I will forward this to you guys. It's his usual very nice discussion. Couple highlights. Londo's hokey pokey conversation with Delenn is my personal highlight of this entire two-party, simply for how rare it is in science fiction to see two aliens earnestly commenting on the oddities of humanity. Especially for the 90s, I think it is still an unusual move to have a scene so focused on non-human characters and have them view humanity in such a funny way. More often than not, if aliens talk about humans, it's either in complete admiration or to antagonize humanity. Very, very rarely is a conversation so natural. So thank you, Alexander. I will be forwarding this to Lou and Karen, and thank you so much for the feedback. All right, Karen, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
I am at Aliveria on Twitter and all the other places. And my blog is allystuff.com, ALLIESSTUFF, Allystuff. And Aliveria is ALEVERIA. Find me anywhere those places lead you to.
Awesome. And Lou?
Of course, you can find us on YouTube at Lou's Review, where these podcasts are hosted. And you can also find the JKLM Media one-offs that we're doing. We will be doing Station 11. We haven't started it yet. Hopefully get that maybe in the next week or two, get going on that one. Stephen King podcast, just had Jesse on as a guest along with Karen. We talked about Fairy Tale and the trailer for Mr. Harrigan's Phone. And the next episode, we're actually going to talk about the movie, which just landed on Netflix this week as well. So look forward to that. And all my other writers podcast is up there on Twitter. You can find me at Lou W. Sitzma or at S King Podcast. And I think that's it.
Yeah, well, I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. You can hear me talk Doctor Who with Charles Skaggs, whose name will be coming up in a minute. We have scheduled the latest Doctor Who episode has just been announced. It will be on October 23rd, where Jodie says goodbye, and we will be talking about that. Right after that, we're continuing to go through classic Doctor Who episodes and modern Doctor Who episodes. You can hear me talking music on Set Listing Bruce, where we talk about Bruce Springsteen and other musicians. And next week, Charles Skaggs, my host with my Doctor Who podcast, Next Stop Everywhere, will be joining us for Babylon Squared, because it is a very timey-wimey episode. Both Lou and Karen suspected that when they heard that Charles wanted to guess. So it wasn't spoiler. They're like, if Charles coming, does it have something to do with time travel? So yes, we'll get to see that. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Lou. Guys, we are going to, I hope you check out. We're going to discuss the Mr. Harrigan's phone. I think that's going to be a fun discussion. We will probably end up putting that on this feed as well, but it will be mainly on Lou's YouTube channel. We will talk to everyone next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And scene.